Taylor Swift reportedly paid $360 million for music she already wrote, recorded, and sang herself. To own her own songs, she had to buy them twice. Think about that. The biggest star on the planet spent the price of a skyscraper to get back something she created with her own hands, because at 19 years old, she signed a contract that meant she never owned it in the first place. This is the 6-year war over who really owns an artist's music. The falling out, the private equity firms, the re-recordings, and how it ended with what's reported to be the most expensive act of buying back your own life's work in music history.
I am confused by the life of a showgirl imagery. Based on the title of this album and the very effective, poignant promotion for it, I really expected this to be more of a conceptual deep dive into the intricate details and issues of a performer at Taylor Swift's level, and kind of talking about all the things that we don't see.
Start with the number, because it's almost hard to believe. In May 2025, Taylor Swift announced she had bought back the master recordings of her first 6 albums, and according to Billboard, sources put the price at around $360 million, reportedly. She never officially disclosed the figure, so hold it as sourced, not confirmed. But $360 million is the number the reporting lands on. Receipt 1, and here's what makes it surreal. That money didn't buy her a new company or a catalog of someone else's songs. It bought back her own. Receipt 2, those exact same master recordings had already been sold once before, in 2019, for a reported $300 million, in a deal she has said she was never given a fair chance to be part of. Her life's work changed hands for hundreds of millions of dollars, and she wasn't the buyer or the seller, she was the merchandise. And receipt 3, the one that shows how far she was willing to go. Rather than accept that, she did something almost unheard of. She re-recorded 6 entire albums from scratch, note for note, releasing them as Taylor's version, specifically to make the originals she didn't own worth less. Most people assume that when you write a song, sing a song, and become famous for a song, you own that song. The paperwork says otherwise, and Taylor Swift found that out the hardest, most expensive way possible. And to understand how the biggest artist alive got locked out of her own music, you have to go back to a contract she signed as a teenager.
I love my country roots more and more the further along this path I get, and I want to honor them more and more, and I feel more tied to them, more loyal to them. The people that shaped who I am as an artist and as a writer.
Here's the thing almost nobody understands about the music business, and it's the root of this entire war. When you sign with a record label as a young artist, you typically do not own your master recordings, the actual recorded versions of your songs. The label does. Taylor Swift signed with a label called Big Machine Records as a teenager, around 15 years old, an unknown from Pennsylvania, with a guitar and a stack of songs. And like virtually every new artist in history, the deal she signed gave the label ownership of the masters. That's not unusual. That's the standard structure of the industry. The label fronts the money to record, market, and break a new artist. And in exchange, the label owns the recordings. For most artists, it never becomes a problem because it stays abstract. But look at what it actually means once that artist becomes the biggest star on the planet. Taylor Swift owned her fame. She owned her songwriting, the publishing, the compositions. She owned the voice everyone recognized. But the actual recordings, the versions of Love Story and Shake It Off that played on every radio, in every store, on every playlist on Earth, those belonged to someone else. She made them. She didn't own them. And that arrangement sits quietly, harmlessly, for years, right up until the moment the person who owns them decides to sell. Because a master recording isn't just a song, it's an asset. It can be bought, sold, traded, and flipped, completely without the artist's involvement. And in 2019, that's exactly what happened.
Taylor Swift lost her masters and flipped the music industry upside down. Here's how contracts almost cost her millions. Like many young artists, Taylor signed with a label that owned her master recordings, meaning they controlled how her music was used, sold, and streamed.
In June 2019, Taylor Swift found out she had lost control of her life's work. And by her account, she found out the way the rest of the world did. Here's what happened as a business transaction, stated plainly. A company called Ithaca Holdings, run by the music manager Scooter Braun, purchased Big Machine Label Group for a reported $300 million. And because Big Machine owned Taylor's masters, that purchase included them. In one corporate deal, the recordings of her first 6 albums became the property of a company run by a man she has publicly described as someone she'd had a difficult history with. Now, the fairness this story requires, stated clearly. This was a legal business transaction. A company bought another company. That happens every day, and there was nothing unlawful about it. But Taylor's reaction was not measured. She publicly called it her worst-case scenario. She characterized the situation, in her own words, as the result of what she described as manipulative behavior. That's her characterization, her language, and it's important to attribute it as exactly that, her side of a bitter dispute, not an established fact. And here's a detail that shows the scale of the money involved. Stop, because this is where it stops being about music at all. That $300 million purchase was reportedly financed in part by the Carlyle Group, one of the largest private equity firms in the world. Read that back. A global private equity giant helped bankroll the deal that gave a company ownership of Taylor Swift's songs. Her music wasn't just an artist's catalog anymore. It was a financial asset on a major investment firm's books. And she was reportedly offered a chance to earn the albums back, one at a time, under conditions she found unacceptable, so she refused. And instead, she did something that had never been attempted at this scale. Here's the move that turned Taylor Swift from a wronged artist into a strategic one. If she couldn't own the original recordings, and she couldn't afford or wasn't allowed to simply buy them back at that point, she found a loophole hiding in plain sight in her own contracts. She owned the songs themselves, the compositions, the lyrics, the melodies. What she didn't own was those specific recordings. So she asked a simple, devastating question. What if she just recorded them again? Note for note, as close to identical as possible, and released those new versions which she would own completely as Taylor's version. Think about what that does to the value of the originals. If Taylor Swift releases a brand new version of Love Story that sounds nearly identical, that she owns, that she promotes, that her enormous fan base deliberately streams instead of the original, then the original recording, the one owned by someone else, starts to lose its value. Why would anyone license, stream, or pay for the version she disowned when the artist herself is pointing everyone to the new one? It was, quite simply, brilliant. Legal, because she owned the underlying songs. Devastating, because it attacked the one thing that made the masters worth hundreds of millions of dollars, their commercial value. She couldn't take her music back by force, so she built a copy so good and so heavily supported by her fans that the original became a depreciating asset. And it worked even better than anyone predicted. The Taylor's version re-records became massive hits in their own right, in several cases outperforming the originals, which quietly changed the math on everything, because the value of those masters was now falling, and the people who owned them were watching.
Just watch her kill it, singing "You Need to Calm Down." Of course, Taylor had to bring back fan favorite and my personal life anthem, her 2014 hit "Shake It Off."
Now watch what happened to those masters while all of this played out, because this is the part that reveals how the music business really works underneath. In late 2020, Scooter Braun's company sold Taylor's master recordings again, this time to a private equity firm called Shamrock Capital, for a reported figure north of $300 million. Sit with that. In roughly 1 year, Taylor Swift's life's work had been bought and then sold again, and at no point in either transaction was she the one holding the pen. Her music was now, formally, a private equity investment, the kind of asset a firm buys expecting it to generate returns, sitting in a portfolio next to whatever else they own. Stop and really absorb what that means, because it's the systemic heart of this entire case. Your favorite songs, the ones that soundtracked someone's wedding, someone's heartbreak, someone's entire adolescence, are not necessarily owned by the person who wrote and sang them. They can be owned by an investment firm, valued on a spreadsheet, and traded between companies like a piece of commercial real estate. That's not a scandal unique to Taylor Swift. That's the normal machinery of the music industry, and it runs on masters. Shamrock bought in expecting a valuable, income-generating catalog. But there was a problem baked into their new asset, a problem named Taylor's version. Because every re-recording Taylor released made the originals Shamrock now owned worth a little less. They had bought a catalog that its own creator was actively, publicly, and very effectively devaluing, which set up the endgame nobody saw coming.
They already have total control. I mean, they have people thinking Taylor Swift is the greatest musician of the last 20 years when nobody even cared about her 5 years ago. Nobody cared until Carlyle Group bought out the whole damn catalog. And then The Messenger put it out that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are dating. They bought the catalog from Scooter Braun for $300-something million.
Here's how the 6-year war finally ended. In May 2025, Taylor Swift announced she had done the thing she'd wanted from the very beginning. She bought all of it back. Every master recording of her first 6 albums, purchased from Shamrock Capital, for what Billboard sources put at around $360 million. Reportedly, again, she didn't confirm the figure, but that's the number the reporting settled on. And notice the fairness in how this actually resolved, because it matters. Shamrock reportedly sold the masters back at roughly what they'd paid for them. This wasn't someone squeezing her for a fortune at the end. It was, by the reporting, a relatively clean transaction, close to cost. And here's a detail that reframes the whole thing. Even Scooter Braun, the man at the center of the original dispute, publicly responded with the words, "I am happy for her." Whatever the history between them, the ending wasn't a bitter one on his side. So how did she pay for it? In Taylor's own telling, on a late-night talk show, she was direct about it. That, she said, is how she spent the Eras Tour money, the record-shattering concert tour that grossed over $1 billion. And she gave the credit, pointedly, to her fans. They, she said, are the reason she was able to get her music back. So the woman who was told at 19 that she didn't own her own recordings spent the biggest tour in history, buying them back at 50. But the real question isn't how she paid. It's what $360 million actually bought her, because it was far more than a stack of old recordings.
All of the music I've ever made now belongs to me. That's what Taylor Swift said after buying back the rights to her first 6 albums. The battle over her music started in 2019, and it's why she's been releasing re-recorded versions of her older songs. Now she owns all of the masters again, and it means she can license the original recordings to films and TV shows.
So what does $360 million buy when you're buying back something you already made? First, the obvious: total permanent control. Every master recording of her first 6 albums now belongs to her outright. Nobody can ever sell them out from under her again, license them without her say, or trade them between firms like a commodity. In her own words, all of the music she'd ever made finally belonged to her. The memories, the handwriting, the decades of work. Second, and bigger than her own catalog, a precedent. Taylor Swift just demonstrated on the largest possible stage that an artist could fight the master system and win, could refuse to accept losing their work, could re-record, could apply pressure, and could ultimately force the asset back into their own hands. No artist had ever done it at this scale. And this is exactly what this series does. Trace where the money and the ownership in these cases actually sit, and what it really costs to move them. Subscribe and you're here for every forensic case as it opens. Case 06 is already being built. So here's the honest answer to the question at the very top. Why did she have to buy it twice? Because in the music industry, the label owns the master recording, not the artist who made it. And when you sign that deal at 19, you are betting that the label will never sell. Taylor lost that bet in 2019, and it cost her a reported $360 million, 6 years, and 6 re-recorded albums to win it back. So I want your verdict, because this genuinely divides people. Was paying $360 million to own what she already created an act of justice? Or is it proof of a system that never should have let her lose it in the first place? Drop it below.
In 2019, Taylor Swift's world was turned upside down when her life's work was sold to a man she called a bully. Instead of backing down, she made a bold move that shook the music industry to its core by re-recording her albums.
Here's the part of this story that should stay with you after the number fades. Taylor Swift won, but she won for a reason almost no other artist can replicate. She was big enough to command $1 billion tour that generated the cash to buy her masters back. Big enough that her re-recordings could outstream the originals and crater their value. Big enough to turn a personal loss into a 6-year strategic campaign the whole world watched. Now think about every artist who isn't Taylor Swift. The songwriter whose one hit is owned by a label that sold it to a fund. The band whose catalog sits in a portfolio, quietly earning for someone who never wrote a note. They signed the same kind of deal at 19, and they will never have $1 billion tour to buy their way out. That's the real lesson of Forensic Case 05. The Masters system isn't rigged against Taylor Swift. She beat it. It's rigged against everyone who isn't her. The rules bent for the biggest star on Earth and stayed exactly where they were for everyone else. So here's your trace the asset question for this case, and I read the sharpest answers at the start of the next one. If you owned a catalog of songs an artist was actively re-recording to devalue, would you sell it back or hold and fight? And the bigger one, should any artist ever have to buy back the music they made? Make your case in the comments. Case 06 is already open. And if you want to see the opposite kind of ownership war, a mogul who turned owning things into billions instead of having them taken away, that forensic case is linked right here. Watch it next. I'll see you there.